Okay. Welcome back, gang. This is going to be an amazing interview you're about to hear. Back in 2016, summer 2016, I meet a guy who I didn't know we were going to have a 7-year relationship, but I had summer a summer course that I rarely take. And this course was full of 8 athletes and two non-athlete students. And one of those athletes was a Zimbabwean swimmer. And now and over the course of time in 20, I think it's Tokyo 2020, he becomes an Olympian. But what I want you to hear today is the story of his quest to become an Olympian, the power and the journey, the hardships, the joys, all the things that go with his journey towards becoming an Olympian. And so I want to introduce to you guys today to Olympian Peter Wetzlar. Thanks for being on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always good to catch up and chat with you, Conrad. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that's great. So, Peter and I, what's interesting for those of you that are listening is that we have spent these last 7 years and spent many hours walking and talking. We used to walk around the university campus. I was that year, 2016, I was his instructor for a class, a summertime class. And um, we had a moment where sometimes I was controversial in the classroom, talked about faith and this and that, and so he challenged me one day, and so I said, "Hey, let's talk." And so it just started this relationship where, for the last 7 years, we've had moments where we've walked miles around campus, parks, and other places, and just have had blast of conversations about all kinds of things, from life to relationships to marriage to all kinds of things. So I'm excited. I'm so excited. So you guys get to get a glimpse of what we've spent hours talking through over many years. So Peter, um, you tell me one time, and I want to kind of throw us in here because there's so much we could talk about your world, but you tell me that at age 12-ish, you made a decision that you wanted to become an Olympian. So if I love to for people just to hear that story where give us context and the mom was coach and you had all these different background, but then you made a decision at age 12. And for some of us, I know when I first heard, I was like, well, now that my son just turned 13, I'm thinking, in fact, your words inspired me I told my son your story and I was like, Peter made a decision at age 12. And the thing he just passed age 12. And it's like, what decisions are you going to make for whatever directions you're going to go? So would you take us back to that story, the beginning of your world, how you grew up, and then take us to this point of making a decision, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so preface to the decision at age 12. I did have some lucky breaks. My mom was a swim teacher. My older sisters were all swimmers, so I was in and around the pool a lot growing up. We would often have pool parties as birthdays, and so the pool became a place that I just loved being. I loved swimming. I loved being in the water. Um, and then when I was in primary school, I watched Kirsty Coventry, one of the greatest female swimmers in history. She was Zimbabwean. She won gold medal at the 2008 Olympics.
Mhm.
I watched that, and in my mind, that was the peak of what the human, uh, you know, experience is to uh, achieve something at the highest level, to craft yourself, to compete. Uh, and so I watched that, and that was a huge catalyst for me. The 2008 Olympics. Just after that Olympics, she actually went to my primary school. So
Mm.
she came to back from the Olympics and visited, and I met her. I got a picture with her, and that was when I made the decision that I want to go to the Olympics. I want to compete at the Olympics. I want to be surrounded by the best in the world and see how I can stack up against them. And then basically, that was just like something that I said to people. I told my parents, told my friends that one day I'm going to go to the Olympics. And just under 10 years later, um, uh, I got to university and that was when the realistic possibility of that happened. That things started to happen, that it became realistic and an achievable goal.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So 10 years to think about that. 10 years, that's not long at all. And so here you are inspired by a former Olympian, um, and you make this decision. So fill some blanks in for me, because I know from our past conversations, here you are in Zimbabwe, but then there was a transition to South Africa.
Yeah.
So help us to kind of hear about like, well, let me ask you this. This is a thought that came to mind. How did you tell mom this? Was it just as an internal decision, or were you like, "Hey, mom, I want to be an Olympian," or "Hey, friends, I want to"? What was that like? And then
No, I
to
would
South
walk
Africa.
around and tell people I'm going to the Olympics. I am going to the Olympics.
I love it.
One day I'm going to go to the Olympics. I told people that,
Wow.
and yeah. So I mean, yeah, it wasn't an internal thing. I mean, obviously it was an internal thing, but
Mhm.
I told people I fully had this absolutely unfounded belief that I was going to go to the Olympics,
Amazing.
and that's when kind of I started to make a plan to actually achieve that.
Mm. And the
So
what that plan look like? So when you say started to make a plan, I'd love to hear about that.
yeah, so at that time I had just started competing in swimming. Before that, I had done some training, but I hadn't really been competing at like a state or national level. So I just started competing. I'd seen that uh, at the Olympics, and then I started realizing if I do want to get to the Olympics, the competition that I need to be against right now needs to be better. I had some people
Mhm.
that were good that were around me, but I knew that I needed to be competing against people that were a lot better than me if I wanted
Mhm.
to get better quickly.
Mhm.
Um, and that's when I started thinking maybe South Africa would be a better uh, environment for me to compete and to grow.
Mhm.
So I think it was the following year or in that same year, I spoke to my parents. We were down in Durban on holiday. There's a famous swimming school, Wetzlar Boys High School, that is in Durban. I begged my parents, can we go and meet the coach and the
Mhm.
principal, see if I can get a scholarship or maybe come and train here. And so I called the school. This is 12-year-old Peter,
Well, that's
not
amazing.
knowing. I don't even think I had a cell phone at the time.
That's
I
wow.
asked my parents that I could borrow their phone to call. I called. I set up the appointment to meet with the principal, and then me and my parents we went to the principal. We chatted. We talked about time. We talked about goals. We talked about trajectories, and he said he'll think about it. We got back to Zimbabwe a couple of days later, and I think a week after that, we got the letter saying we're going to offer you a scholarship.
That's amazing.
Uh, I was super excited.
Yeah.
My mom was excited. My dad was less so. His only boy to
Mhm.
lose that
Mhm.
and to be away so much going to boarding school. They had wanted me to start the following semester, so there wasn't much time between the initial interview and starting school. I think it might have been a couple of months, 2 or 3 months,
Mm.
and yeah, so that's how I got the scholarship to go to Westfall, and it, it sounds nice. It sounds like everything was just aligned up and
Mhm.
perfect. When I got there, I think the magnitude of the decision that I had made and the sacrifices that I was going to make hadn't really dawned on me yet.
Mhm.
I hadn't really been away from my family for more than a couple of days
Mhm.
before that. I was now in a different country. My parents dropped me at the boarding house. I had never seen the boarding house. I didn't know the type of people I was going to be living with. I didn't know anything. And uh, in retrospect, the hardships that I experienced at the boarding house and the challenges that I had to overcome from being away from family were challenges that I was going to have to face at some point in my life.
Mhm.
But having faced them earlier gave me the strength that those same concerns later on weren't going to impact me negatively. Uh,
Yeah.
so when I did start at Way for Boys, there was somewhat of a language barrier. Westville and Durban is quite an Afrikaans area. I had
Mhm.
never spoken Afrikaans. The school was in English, but the majority of students were Afrikaans. The
Mhm.
boarding house was mostly athletes that lived outside the area. So
Mhm.
having a huge cultural difference between local athletes and then my experience and really struggling with the homesickness.
Mhm.
There was a lot of challenges that came along with that. Just this decision that I want to go, and then
Mhm.
actually getting there and realizing, I don't get to see my family for 4 or 5 months at a time.
Mm.
Back then, I think I had, I don't think I had a smartphone. I think I had a flip phone. I could call my parents once a week. I didn't
Yeah.
really have much contact with my family, which was really difficult.
Yeah. That's, I was thinking about how much over the years I've just learned of your family, you get to meet your family and how much you love your family. And I can imagine how hard that was away from your sisters, away from mom and dad, and just wow. Um, uh, so you're there. So there's this family that you're homesick. You're having these experiences. Culture shock is what I'm hearing. How was the swimming part of things? Was the swimming part of things hard as well? Was it? I mean, here's mom that had been coach for so many years, and now you're under new coaches. What was all that transition like as well?
The transition was, again, another thing that I had not even considered.
Mm,
I knew that the competition and the competitive nature of Wrestle Boys and Durban in general was going to be greater than what I'd experienced in Zimbabwe.
mhm,
But I didn't even have a concept of how difficult the training would be. Like,
mhm,
I likened it to if you've ever run, say, a mile, and you've never run more than a mile,
mhm,
and a marathon runner comes in and they've done ultra marathons, run 50, 100 miles, and they talk to you about what it's like to run a marathon. If you've only run a mile,
mhm,
you might have a concept of what running 2 miles is, or maybe even 5 miles.
mhm,
But to go all the way out to 20, 20 whatever, 26 miles it is for a marathon, and then to go all the way out to what an ultra marathon is like,
mhm,
it's so different. There's such a shift that even if people talk to you about what it's like, you really don't have a concept or a framework to project out what it feels like to do
mhm.
this thing.
That's right.
So coming from Zimbabwe, where we were training, four times a week. In the winters, we would take off because we didn't have heated pools. Uh, to South Africa, where we were doing twice a days, Monday through
Mm,
Saturday,
wow.
and not only were we just doing more number of practices, the practice intensity was at a much greater level.
Mm,
The attention to detail, um, and interestingly enough, I went through that same transition coming to university, where the level of university was just another level that I didn't even conceptualize.
wow. Wow.
So I struggled at both steps, which is a good thing. If I hadn't had that first step to South Africa, coming from Zimbabwe to America, the difference would have been so great. I don't think. I think I would have crumbled under that rather
Mhm.
than been able to just quite reach the next level.
That's right. It's interesting when you said earlier about you knew you had to. It's interesting, almost like this intuition inside of you. You knew you had to go to a higher level of competition to get better, and then you have this transition, and you're going through this. Sounds like a major learning curve to be able to like, okay, I was not expecting this level of shift, but it sounds like you rose to the occasion. And then what I'm hearing from you again thematically is that when you came to the university, a very similar sort of thing. And circumstantial rise, you rose to the occasion. And then I want to it's when we get to the part of that we get to the Olympics, I would love to hear if there's kind of another shift there at a whole new level. Though, it's a different dynamic. But take me back though for a moment. Oh, I was thinking about how here's mom's training and now you're experiencing a new training. Um, and I was wondering because I know your heart for family and your love for family. Was there, I guess I'm wanting to kind of get into your mind a little bit. So here's mom, family, coach, and I'm imagining her support, Was she hard on you? Let me ask that question. Was she kind of hard on you there, or was it kind of a lighter sort of coaching, and then you got to this real hard, maybe impersonal journey? I'm just kind of wondering some of those dynamics for a quick moment.
So I had a bit of a transition. So my mom taught me to swim, and then she coached me for a couple of years. And then so she was like the junior coach at Shark Swimming Club. That's the club that I was training at in Zimbabwe. And then they had a senior coach. So for maybe a year or two before, I'm not exactly sure the timeline, but for at least a year or two, I was swimming under Kathy Love, Mrs. Love,
Mhm,
before I came to South Africa. And I never felt pressure from my mom.
mhm,
I mean, yeah, I did lots of different sports when I was younger,
mhm,
and I remember I can't remember what, I think it was like say gymnastics, and my mom woke me up to go to gymnastics class or whatever, and I just said like I don't want to go, and she said that's okay. And the second time, she woke me up like a couple weeks later. I said I don't want to go. She's like that's okay. Um, is it something that you want to be doing in the future? And I said I don't think so. And so I stopped doing gymnastics. I said no twice, and she said, "If you don't want to be doing it, that's totally fine." I didn't do it again. Um, with swimming, uh, I remember one time she woke me up. I said, I don't want to go to practice." And she said, "That's okay." So she went back to sleep. The day goes on. I see her in the afternoon. She says, "Peter, I'm not going to wake you up for practice anymore. If you want to go to practice in the mornings, you come wake me up. I don't want to get up in the morning early to come and get you out of bed.
mhm,
If you want to go, you have the initiative."
mhm,
And that made it so that I realized like swimming wasn't like gymnastics. Like I didn't wake up and think, oh, I got to go to this thing. It
mhm,
was, I wake up and I think, oh, let me get my mom up, let me get food, let me make sure I'm ready,
mhm,
so that I can be ready for practice. So it's a bit of a long-winded thing, but I never felt pressure from my mom. I never
mhm,
felt like I needed to um, I never felt like she needed to put pressure on me
mhm,
to race or to train. I felt like it was something that I wanted to do,
mhm.
um, and they were just hugely supportive. I never felt like they were ever gonna say, "Hey, um, take it easy," or
Yeah.
"We can't afford that." Like we go on training trips or go to compete overseas, and at a young age, I just went. I never thought,
Mm.
how is this being paid for?
Yeah.
And only as I become an adult, speaking to my parents and the fundraising, all these other things that they would do to try and get the money
Um,
together to help me go on these to go compete. So they were hugely, hugely supportive. Um,
That's what I admire about your mom and dad because they are beautiful people and they have been, I've, seen you through a lot of different journeys in these last 7 years and like the support. That's why I wanted to zoom in there for a second. I think you'd even just for drawing that out is like you have special parents.
yeah,
And I hope when they listen to this, they just feel honored because it's special. They are exceptionally supportive. So then transition me because I want to get to the place where I want people to hear the kind of the whole Olympic journey here soon. But like here you have this head coach. Was the head coach? So mom coached you, didn't put that pressure. Then you said you had the senior coach. Take me to this place of where like these experiences with different coaches. Was there a transition from kind of mom to now the senior coach, then these coaches in South Africa, and then coaches in here in the United States?
yeah. So I'll touch on a little bit on each. My mom's training was fun. Like I think that's super important for young kids in sports. Like if a kid is loving, being on the baseball field or in the water or whatever it is, if they're loving doing it at a young age, they're going to learn way more from just doing it a lot than any kind of training. So
Mhm,
keeping it fun, obviously technique and stuff needs to be guided, but keeping it fun is super important. My mom was a super huge, huge advocate of keeping it fun. She'd bring toys to the pool and we'd like dive down to get them, or she'd throw a ball and it would be like a race to go get it. So it's like
mhm,
all these competitive, technique things that we're learning, but in an environment that's fun and competitive and just bring up the natural playfulness in kids.
Mhm.
The transition from that to Mrs. Love was very rigid. Um, there's like a old school style of coaching that's
Mhm.
still sometimes around. She was definitely part of that, where um, we had the same warm up. We do this kind of set, we have this kind of warm down, and then we're done. There wasn't much flexibility. It was very rigid, very um, not a lot of variation.
Mhm.
And I think there's like a saying that humans love novelty. So
Mhm.
even if you're doing the same thing, but it's slightly different, and like the same concept, but just slightly different, it just makes doing it a bit more pleasant if it's
Mhm.
there's variation.
Mhm.
She was not like that. She liked to keep the same, make sure things were the same, and did through practices. Um, so I definitely learned a lot of mental strength from that. Not wanting to do something but doing it anyway,
Mhm.
not liking what we're doing but doing it anyway and doing it with excellence. I think is a mental skill rather than like anything else. Like I don't think you just wake up and you're mentally strong. I think you
Mhm.
slowly develop these skills that you apply, and
Mhm.
you apply them over and over, and that's what gives you mental strength. So I definitely think she taught me a lot of mental strength. Contrast that to Petro in South Africa. She was my coach all the way through my time in South Africa. She was very harsh. I remember, uh, I think it was a year into training with her. I just swam one of the best swims I had swum ever at the point,
Mhm.
and she smiled and shook my hand as like a congratulations, and I almost cried. I felt tears welling in my eyes at
Oh,
how
wow.
proud I felt because she had smiled at me and shook my hand. She she was an incredible athlete. She um, had a mentality for excellence. She didn't have time for people that weren't going to try hard.
Mhm.
So she had this mentality of if if she's telling you or she's yelling at you, that means she cares. Like if she's telling you to fix something or repeating something to make sure you do it right, it's because she cares. If she's not saying anything to you, she doesn't care anymore. She knows
Mhm.
you're going to do whatever you're going to do and
Mhm.
doesn't want to waste your breath with it. But as the time at Westfall went on, we grew quite a great respect for each other.
Mhm.
And her training was very diverse. We did lots of different types of trainings, and definitely um, fell back into in love with swimming. I had a good group of guys around me too, so the culture of training was good. Where we're competing, and each of us is trying to be better than each other.
Mhm. Mhm.
The iron sharpens iron. So
Yeah.
I definitely um, felt like Petro's approach to coaching was, um, what is the quickest way that we can get better? Was the
Mm.
um, if we're losing a certain amount of time on our turns, let's focus on turns. If we're
Mhm.
losing time on our starts, let's focus on starts. It wasn't just a blanket. Let's everybody improve starts. Let's
Mhm.
everybody improve turns. It was Peter needs to fix this. Peter, this is your focus for this week. It's going to be to focus on
Mhm.
whatever element. Then coming to South Africa, I first trained under Chip Klein. He was by far the toughest coach that I trained with in my time. He uh, he liked mental strength. He liked to test the mental strength. I
Mhm.
think he almost wanted to see if he could break us.
Wow.
Like he wanted to see if people would give up, or if not quit, at least mentally give up.
Mhm.
Um, there were many sets where um, we didn't do the set because it made us better, or there wasn't a direct purpose. Oh, we're doing this to fix our turns, or we're doing this to fix our endurance. It was purely, let's see who had the mental fortitude to get through this.
Wow.
And they were almost built to be, I don't want to say anti-productive because they were productive. Like we definitely got fitter and stronger and mentally strong, mentally stronger.
Mhm.
But they definitely, if you took that set to any other coach and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about giving this set to my athlete," another coach would be like, "Hey, look, like there's better ways to do this." um, and so we butted heads a lot. I struggled under him in the sense that I felt like I could be a lot better with just a little bit of tweaking, like changing a couple things here and there
Mhm.
would make me and my teammates a lot better. I think I
Mhm.
was a bit naive to that. I don't, he was an older coach. He's not going to change his coaching style, you know, three-quarter of the way through his
Mhm.
career. But I still had hope and I tried very hard. But at first, it was really tough mentally. And then it became a bit of respect again. Like I respected him. We kind of grew to have this mutual respect, and he definitely warmed up to uh, some of the concepts. He definitely, if I was to say the coach that created the most resilience in me is definitely him.
Mm.
He he had his flaws, but he was great. I really especially towards the end, really enjoyed my time under him.
Mhm.
And then he left UK, and I became under Michael Camper. And Michael Camper is a phenomenal coach. He, um, made it fun. He made it, let's race. Everybody loves the race. Racing is like an innate thing. Like we want to
Mhm.
compete and see where we're at and win. And
Mm.
so he brought me back to that racing, competing nature. Our practices were a lot shorter. I was a sprinter, so we didn't need to be doing these, 8,000 yard practices.
Mhm.
We brought it way down. We were doing 4,000 yards, and our times were still the same. Our fitness was the same. It was, um, it really introduced me to the concept of perfect practice
Mm.
uh, creates perfect swimming rather than just practice makes perfect. Everyone wants to say practice makes
Mhm.
perfect.
Mhm.
No, perfect practice makes perfect. You're not gonna get better just by slogging away. You need to be diligent and focus at what you're doing and improve what you're doing in
Sounds like
practice.
intentionality,
Exactly.
intentional. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He was super intentional with us. And he coached me through the Olympics, and I definitely don't think that I would have been able to do it without him. He was, both a great coach, but also, almost a mentor to me. He was super supportive. He was just an awesome guy. And I only trained under him for like 2.5 years, and especially the year before the Olympics, um, during COVID, he would send me sets, and I would have to do them at the YMCA because there was no pool that I could train with that he could come to as well. Like he couldn't
Mhm.
stand on deck at the Y, and I couldn't go to the university because I was no longer a
Mhm.
student. And if it wasn't for him, writing out those sets and sending me times and texting me updates as I was going through the set and keeping me on the ball, it wouldn't have been possible. So I owe a lot to him.
Wow. Man, I love the journey of coaches. That's just the beautiful um I'm just thinking about the beauty of that string of people that brought influence, if I can use that word picture of string. And I'm just thinking about the deposits that each person made
Exactly.
along the journey. That's just, have you thought about that before?
Yeah, I've spoken with my mom about it, and it's so interesting how at the time things that seem like, why is this coach doing this? Like this is wrong.
Mhm.
This is not what I need. This is bad. You know, and then you go down the line like, that may not have been the best thing for me, but it gave me, resilience. It gave me strength. And now I know no matter what this coach gives to me, I know I can do it because I've been
Mhm.
under that coach. Or there's definitely this compounding effect of learning as you go
Mhm.
under different coaches. Yeah.
That's powerful. And I'm thinking in context of my book and just thinking about calling and what people are called to, and a lot of it, I believe, if our calling is an invitation of the Lord to step into a story that He's written in our lives. And when I think about it, it's like here's these characters that showed up on the journey
Mm-hmm.
that said, okay, it's almost like when I think about God's intention is like Peter needs this. And so here's this interaction with this coach and deposit gets made. And then next person comes along, Peter needs this. And to think all this, 10-year journey from decision 12 to, was it 22 that you were in the Olympic? About 22?
Uh, so yeah, I was in the Olympics at 24. I think.
24, 24. Okay, age 24. Yeah. And that's for those listening, it's not 2024, obviously, age 24. And and I've always loved your story. That's just
Yeah,
fascinating for me.
yeah,
But now take us to this journey of shifting to the Olympics. So here you are, university. You're training under, you mentioned two coaches at the university.
mhm,
They had their different moments and deposited different things. One coach kind of helped coach you to the Olympics, those 2.5 years. Take us into this place of like sort of qualifying and know the kind of journey, because we're talking about a 12-year journey from age 12 to finally experiencing it at 24. Is that right? Yep.
yeah, sure.
Okay. Yep. And so
Yeah.
um take me to this place of like you find out that you're qualifying, or you go through what I don't know the process of what qualifying was, but take us into that story, and love to kind of explore that a little bit.
Yeah. So so the way it works, well, the way it works for me, there's actually a number of different ways that you can qualify for the Olympics or get to competing at the Olympics. And there's different um, requirements for each, right? So the way that I qualified was um, uh, through uh, a developments road. So the requirements were I needed to compete at World Champs the year before, and then if I got a qualifying time, it needed to be at a FINA approved meet, and I could go to the Olympics with just a B time. So there's like an A and a B time. Um, I just needed a B time. So in 2019, I go to World Champs and I swim the 50 freestyle. I missed the B time by 9/100ths of a second.
Mm.
Um, if I had been 9/100ths faster, that would have been it. That's Peter, you're going to the Olympics next year. It's done. We're good. Um, but I still had a lot of time to train, to get better, and to re-race and get that B time. So I wasn't too worried. Then I started training with the new coach, and I got a lot better, significantly better. That that year at ACCs, I came fourth. I think I was ranked ninth or 10th in the nation going into NCAA's. Super excited about where I can be. When I say ninth in the nation, I mean in America, so not in
Hmm.
Zimbabwe.
Sure, sure, sure.
So I was ranked ninth in the US and really excited for the Olympics in just a couple of months. Basically, I would go to NCAA's, I'd come back, retrain, go to a qualifying meet. I was, super certain that I could get the B time. In fact, I thought there was a chance of me getting the A time, um, and then go on to compete in the Olympics a couple months later. So ACCs was February 2020. NCAA's would have been, I think, April 2020.
Hmm.
I would have retrained, competed in May, got my A or B time, and then they would have had the Olympics in July, and I would have competed. It would have been like a perfect cap to my career.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I swam at ACCs, swam these great times. A couple of weeks later, COVID hits, and we don't get to go to NCAA's. There's a whole bunch of questions: are the Olympics still happening? What's going on? I couldn't train with the university. So there was actually a period where I didn't have any training facilities. I didn't have, there was no YMCA that was open, there was no pools open, and um, I was just sitting around finishing up my university. Then they announced that the Olympics was going to be postponed to 2021. And I called my coach and said, hey, like, do you think it's at all possible that I keep training? You know, I feel confident that I can make it, but I'm not sure. And he said, I believe it. I called my old weights coach. She was 100% on board. Janine Rankin, if you listen to this, you're amazing. She was such a huge advocate for me to compete, to keep training. She was awesome. I uh, I I loved being coached by her. She was my weights coach. And then I found out that because of the delay in the Olympics, there was another option. Because there was not as many opportunities to race and to qualify, they allowed Zimbabwe to send two people that were the highest FINA points ranked. So I was the highest FINA points ranked with just a couple hundreds off the qualifying time. The way that FINA points work is they take the world record, and then for each split second or 1/100th of a second slower or 2/100th of a second slower is a point deducted. So 1,000 points is the world record. Each point, each split second backwards or 2 split seconds backwards is, and there's like an algorithm that tells them, how many split seconds is points. What I didn't realize was that my 100 freestyle technically had more FINA points. I was closer to the world record in the FINA points in the 100 freestyle, even though I was further away from the qualifying time.
Mm.
So I almost qualified in the 50 freestyle, but I technically had more FINA points in the 100 freestyle. I managed to get back into the YMCA trained that year as if I'm racing the 50 freestyle. I've done very little base training, very little endurance, and I get to the application process. I go through the application process. A Zimbabwe official does the application process, and I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before I meant to go to the Olympics. They announced in the newspaper in Zimbabwe the Olympic team, and now it's official. I've made the team. It's been approved by FINA. It's been approved by the Olympic Committee. In a month's time, I'll go to the Olympics. And in the news article, it says Peter Wetzlar will be swimming the 100 freestyle.
Oh.
And I just thought it was like, newspapers in Zimbabwe that get things wrong all the time. It didn't really concern me. But just as a precaution, I messaged the Zimbabwe swimming official and said, hey, just checking in. I am swimming the 50 freestyle, not the 100 freestyle. And they said, no, you're swimming 100 freestyle. That's what you have high FINA points for, and nothing we can do about it. You're swimming 100 freestyle. So
Wow.
I called my coach and said, I have a problem. I need to train for as quickly as possible to get some endurance back before we go to Tokyo. I mean, this is a month out. I mean, I'm meant to start tapering in a week and a half.
Wow. Wow.
And so I am a bit in panic mode and do as much as I can. I start doing pace training, and surprisingly, I actually felt great. I felt fine enough to do the extra distance, and the only issue was I didn't know my pacing. In swimming, it's like running. If your first mile in a marathon is too fast, the last mile in the marathon is going to be way slow. So if you're 10 seconds too fast, you might be a minute slow on the last mile.
Mm-hmm.
In swimming, there's the same concept. A second too fast on the way out, 2 seconds too slow on the way back. So I was really worried that I would go out slightly too slow and really struggle to come back, or go out a little bit too fast and really struggle to come back, or go out too slow and be too far behind to be competitive on the way back.
Mm.
And yeah, so that was the qualifying process, the struggle of finding out that I was in the wrong event, and then getting to the Tokyo and swimming 100 freestyle.
Wow. Wow. I didn't realize that shift like during that time. I think we weren't talking as much about those details during that
Yeah,
time, and I'm thinking, so here you are getting to the Olympics in a race that you had not been training for,
yeah,
and
yeah,
now last minute you're having to shift.
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
And so when you look back at that, um, I'm curious as to your goal is being fulfilled from
Mhm.
12 years old, but then how do you process all that? Do you feel like you would have done better at the 50? Do you feel like it's kind of just, you know, all right, I did the 100, I reached my goal. And then in these last few moments, take us into sort of the post um Olympics and kind of like your world now. But first of all, take us back there for a second. What was that processing like? Oh no, how have you processed that? I'm curious.
I when I first found out, when I first like came to when I first found out, I was really angry.
Mm,
Then I started trying to see if they could change it.
mm-hmm,
Um, I put as much pressure as I could to get them to change it. It almost went through. It wasn't quite possible. The way they fill up events made it difficult, and somebody had to pull out. And also, think I was still trying to fix. I was trying to fix it.
mm-hmm,
I definitely have a fixed mentality. Like something broken,
mm-hmm,
let's change it. Let's
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So I was really angry. Um, and then I don't know exactly when it was, but a couple days before I competed, um, I realized I'm here. Like I have achieved. It doesn't detract from it. I'm going to compete at the Olympics. I'm going to walk out there. I'm going to race. I'm going to do my best, and um, it's going to be amazing, you know.
mm-hmm,
And I raced, and I was a little bit disappointed with my time. It was all right. I definitely feel like I could have done better. Um, but I was sitting on the flight back to Lexington, and I was looking at the times in the rankings. I ranked 42nd at the Olympics out of I think 72 or 82.
mm-hmm,
Um, the time that I think I could have swum would have ranked me, I think 32nd or 30th or 28th
mm-hmm,
or whatever this number
mm-hmm,
is. It's just
mm-hmm.
arbitrary. In the 50 freestyle. And I remember sitting there thinking, I almost ruined my Olympic experience because I was so caught up overcoming 42nd or 28th.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to swim at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Yes, if I saw my main event, I might have ranked a couple places better. Um, but I still swam. I still did my best. I still made my family proud.
That's
I
great.
still, um, did what I set out to achieve. And the difference between telling somebody I came 42nd versus telling somebody I came 28th,
Mm-hmm,
you know, I'm actually not even certain I came 42nd. I'll have to check that because
mm-hmm.
it's one of those things that, like, once you do it, it, you know, the actual ranking doesn't matter. Like, I got to achieve what I set out to achieve.
Right. That's beautiful. Wow. Well, gang, I hope you're on the edge of your seat, just kind of listening to all this details like I am. Just loving how this progression from a 12-year-old saying, I want to do this to where this journey, all these details, the story, coaches, shifting two nations from Zimbabwe to South Africa to the United States to the different pressures that come with that, the mishaps and the confusions, but yet achieving. And and I, I'm just always fascinated by your story. I think for another time we'll pick up some of the post Olympics because you've got us to this place of Olympics. I think it's enough for now, but I would love if you wouldn't mind, um, give us some. I'm thinking about really. I'm thinking about my son. Be honest with you. Here's my 13-year-old, who loves sport, the sport he plays, soccer, and I think there's potential there. But if you wouldn't mind for a moment, would you encourage the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 year old, or maybe the college athlete that still has that dream? They're in that moment, they're in that dream is in their heart. Or the mom or dad, which would all ties together. Would you,
Yeah,
as whatever bubbles up inside of you, love to hear just some words of encouragement to say, look, this is a journey I've been on. This is what's happened. Here's some things to think about and consider. And then we'll let you have the final words.
absolutely. Yeah, I think to the youngsters, if you're in that 9 to 14, 15-year-old age group. Keep it fun, enjoy it. These are some of the most fun times you'll have, where you've got your buddy, competing next to you or on your team, or and you've got that fun, back and forth where one of you's better than the other's better. And
Mm,
there's a joy in the competitive nature. Um, Enjoy the camaraderie of your team. Um, as you become more and more, uh, I'd say, like, professional, that becomes less and less fun and more a need to win. So enjoy it while it's fun. Like, it's a great time. You're gonna look back at those memories and think, some of my best friends were made during that time.
mhm,
Um, I think keep it fun and keep it keep an intent. Um,
mhm.
if you, I'll speak to swimming because swimming's what I know best.
Sure, sure.
But if you're a swimmer, right, and you are swimming next to your buddy, and you see that every time you go into the wall, you're with him, and then every time you come off the wall, he's slightly ahead of you. Your turns are not as good as his.
Mm,
Let me focus on my turns. Let me be diligent about my turns. Let me see if I can keep up with him on every turn.
mhm,
Um, if um, if that's a focus, um, you'll improve your turns.
mhm, mhm,
If you just swim and you want to keep up with your friend, you'll swim harder and your turns will be worse and your turns will never get better,
mm,
but you'll just swim harder. And you may pick up other bad habits because you're trying to speed up in the first couple of strokes to catch up to him after the turn,
mhm,
um, and be inefficient in that use of energy.
mm,
So be intentful, analyze what you're doing, see what other people are doing. How
mm.
are they better than you? I used to bring a GoPro to practice and
Huh,
video some of my friends and say, and like they would love it. Like I went to this one guy and said, "Hey, you've got the best underwaters in our team, in our whole program. Do you mind if I video underwaters? I want to watch and see what you're doing." And he was like so pumped, like, "Yeah, I'm the best underwaters." And I videoed his underwaters, and 6 months later, I was beating his underwaters,
wow.
and he wasn't so happy about that video anymore. But watching what other guys are doing, you know, no athlete, even the greats have every single element down.
Mm,
Uh, and even some of the worst athletes will have some element that's perfect.
mhm,
So watch what people are doing that's good. Watch what people are doing that's bad. Eliminate the bad from your performance and try and develop the good. Yeah, I think that intentionality is really important.
mm,
I think as a parent, I I really didn't think about how my parents played a role until like way later. I mean, my
mhm,
parents, um, you don't realize that you have fantastic parents until um, you start looking around and seeing the pressures and the negative things that parents do in other people. My parents super encouraging. My dad, the only time my dad has not been supportive was when I was wanting to go to South Africa boarding school, and he didn't want me to go. Not because he didn't think it was best for me or anything like that. He just didn't want to lose his son. Um, and my mom always super supportive. I think encouraging kids to keep having fun. Um, there's a strange dynamic that happens around that 13, 14-year-old mark where you start to rebel. You don't want to do what your parents are saying. And with my parents, when they said do this, and I said I don't want to do that anymore. It's not where my heart is at. My parents said, okay, you don't want to do gymnastics, or you don't want to do rugby, or you don't want to do this. That's fine. We're done. You don't have to do it. Like, do what you love, and you'll do a lot better. I think my um, my encouragement to parents is that um, there's a lot of kids that dream of going competing at high levels. Um, the chances of your kid getting to the top level is really out of their control and your control. There's like that saying, it takes a village to raise a kid. But it takes even more than that to produce a performance athlete. Like I went to the Olympics, but my performance was on the backs of multiple coaches, my parents, my siblings, my friends, all the athletes I competed against. They helped me get there.
Mhm.
If your kid is missing one of those elements, like the competitive nature of a friend, they may not get there, and that's acceptable.
Mhm.
What would be terrible is for you to put a lot of pressure on them, put a lot of pressure on them to compete, to perform, and they still don't get there. Not because of lack of effort or lack of, you just circumstantial things,
Yeah.
and then ruin the relationship that you have with your parents, with your child. I have a number of friends that their parents would push them, push them, push them. They didn't really want to do it. They competed at a high level. They got to NCAA level, college swimming, but they weren't passionate about it. They slugged through 4 years
Hmm.
because they needed the scholarship. And the day that swimming ended, they'd never been back in the water. They don't want to, they have mediocre, relationship with their parents. But I think for my kids, if I got to choose between having a high performance athlete child and having a relationship with my kid, I would choose a relationship with my kid 10 times
Yeah.
out of 10.
Wow.
So be careful to um, to sacrifice one for the other. Yeah.
Hmm. That's
Especially
powerful.
because one more thing, especially because having a good relationship with a kid is very intentional. You can almost certainly create that.
Hmm.
Having a professional athlete as a kid is, you know, yeah. Obviously, there's hard work and there's all the elements that you need to do, but you can have all those elements and it still not happen because of incredible circumstantial things, that are very common. A car accident when you're in high school and those prime training years gone. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're still a good athlete, but you're just never going to be, you know, the highest caliber
Hmm.
because you missed out on those 6 months when you were developing the most. And
Hmm.
that sucks. Like that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Wow, bro. Love your wisdom. Love your thoughts there. Love just your experience. You're giving us a piece of your story, piece of your heart, piece of your precious family, and just telling us about this precious family and the support you've got. And love your counsel at the end. This is all great stuff. Peter, thank you so much just for your time. And again, just you. Gang, I'm hoping that you've really heard today the beauty of I believe again God's a storyteller, and here's Peter telling the details of you didn't get the full story, but you've got enough to see, wow, a child makes a decision at 12, and now 12 years later they become an Olympian, that they fulfill something that had a journey to it, and it had ebbs and flows and different ingredients that aided in this recipe to become, an Olympian. And he can look back decades from now and say, "Yeah, I was an Olympian." And but yet those details of those stories are unique in how they all got orchestrated. And so hopefully today you guys are just encouraged. Hopefully you're either activated, cultivated, or empowered to reach your potential. Each of us have potential. Parts of Peter's story could have activated something in you, could have maybe cultivated something or empowered you. And so that's why I do this podcast. So thanks, guys, for listening in. Thank you, Peter, again, just for your time.
thank
Um,
you.
you're welcome. Thank you just for you guys being so supportive of the show, and more interviews to come. But otherwise, I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks. Wait, let me stop.